My husband came home twice today. So my husband came home at 1:55 p.m. today. I was sitting at my computer in the living room, had a straight view to the front door. My husband was supposed to come home at 5 p.m., not 1:55 p.m., so when I heard him opening the door, I was busy writing on my computer and was talking to my friend on the phone, so I didn't look at the door first, just listening to the sound of someone coming in. Now my thoughts were that it couldn't be my husband since he would first be home at 5, so I thought it must be my mother. But the sounds sounded like my husband, so I looked up from the screen and saw him hunched down by the door as if he was putting his motorcycle helmet in place on the floor. Then I turned towards the screen. Next time I looked back, he was standing at the dinner table, removing his jacket and his motorcycle suit as he always does, although he did still have his helmet on, which he normally doesn't do. I was busy, so I looked back at the computer. Next, I see him going up the stairs without saying a word. Now, he has been sick the last couple of days, and I was talking with my friend on the phone, so I thought he didn't speak a word because he was sick and had to go home early from work and just needed to lay down in his bed, so I didn't think any of it. An hour later, I have to ask my son about something. Their rooms are right next to each other, so after talking to my son, I check on my husband. He is lying in the bed, sleeping. I go downstairs and continue the work on the computer. At 5:10, I go out to have a cigarette in our shed, and I just thought I better go up and wake him up, since he needs to cook for us tonight since I have an assignment I need to do for school. And right in that minute, I hear a motorcycle drive into our driveway. I think, well, it can't be him, so who is it? We live far away from family and friends, only my mother lives nearby, and at 75 years old, she does not drive a motorcycle. Maybe a postman? And lo and behold, it is my husband returning from work. I am flabbergasted, and I tell him what I have experienced. He says he's been at work all day. I remember my son was down in the living room when my husband comes home, so I run up to my son and ask him, "Did Dad not come home earlier?" Believing he will say no, but then he says yes. I feel like a moron for asking. Early on in my relationship, I frequently spent the night at my boyfriend's condo. He lived alone on the bottom floor. His neighbor above him was a kind and usually quiet guy. I rarely noticed noises coming from above. For context, almost the entire condo was hardwood flooring, with the only carpet being in the family room. My boyfriend was working a pipe-fitting job and commuting a couple of hours away, so he would usually leave at 4 in the morning, if not earlier. I'd usually stay in bed for a couple of hours after he left, and would hit the road around 7 or 8 depending on my work schedule. The first time I noticed something, it was just a dream, albeit a very vivid dream. This took place after my boyfriend left for work, and I had fallen back asleep. In the dream, I was walking through his condo, and as I passed by the bathroom, an old man came out and started yelling at me, saying something was wrong with the water. He had no clothes on, was a shorter, rounder, bald sort of fella. When I went to look in the tub, the water was coming out a dark brown, almost black color, and the old man started telling me I needed to get out, still yelling at me. I didn't think much of this dream. I figured it was my mind being silly and remembering that the building used to be an assisted living facility. A week or two later, the weirdness escalated a bit. My boyfriend left for work as usual, but this time I had a harder time falling back asleep. I gave up after a half hour or so, settling on scrolling through social media until it was time to leave. As I'm laying in his bed, I hear what sounds like wet footsteps coming down the hallway. I can hear each individual step squish as it comes down the about 25 feet long hallway until it stops outside of the bedroom door. There was no shadow I could see, and the sound was so clear that I initially assumed my boyfriend has forgotten something at home or had been sent home from work. I waited and waited for him to open the door, but never heard the footsteps recede. I stayed frozen in his bed and ultimately chose to ignore it. I waited patiently for the sun to come out and promptly left without even making the bed. I had my second sleep paralysis episode last week. Someone gave me some advice. This was my second really strange sleep paralysis episode. I've had sleep paralysis before, but these were totally different. This time, I went to bed late, around 4 in the morning, and woke up exactly 1 hour later after the episode. I could move, see, touch, hear, and feel everything. I was in my bed, stuck in this episode, in my house. I could see my room and hear my fan, but I knew I wasn't really home. It felt like a parallel universe or something. Everything looked faded, washed out, and lifeless. My cats were gone, and I was too scared to leave my room. I found my phone and tried to turn it on. I could press the button and hear the sound, but the screen stayed black. I kept pressing the button over and over, and finally it turned on. But the screen showed a child's face, like a ghost kid. It freaked me out. I knew from the start it was a sleep paralysis episode, so I tried really hard to wake up. Then I heard a voice. It said something like, "The door is already open, but you keep knocking." I speak Spanish, so I heard it in Spanish. "La puerta ya está abierta, pero sigues tocando." I'd never heard that saying before, but I decided to listen. I stopped fighting it, stopped trying to wake up, and slowly came back to reality. After that, I tried to Google the phrase, but I couldn't find anything. These episodes started soon after I posted about my childhood paranormal experiences on Reddit. Ever since I heard the voice, I've been thinking about that advice, looking for open doors in my life, opportunities I just need to walk through. Experienced a voice and random person from out of nowhere at a cemetery. I was staying at my aunt's for a week helping her move, as she is moving houses soon. I'm a photographer, and I went down to my aunt's local graveyard to photograph the wildlife around. The graveyard is slightly rural, but open, as I have been there previously when visiting, and never felt nor experienced anything bad or creepy. When I first entered, I looked around to check to see whether anyone was there. As far as I saw, there was absolutely no one. I went to the bottom to photograph these birds. When I got my camera out, my battery was flat dead, even though I had charged it a week before. Sounds all normal, and I thought, oh well, better head back. I looked around again, not a person in sight. As I got halfway in the open space, no graves, I decided to kneel down to put my camera in the bag, but as soon as I knelt down, I heard a voice in my head. It was my voice, but toneless and urgent, and it told me to move. Move now! It's unsafe, move! Which I dismissed the first move, but the second I just got up and jogged forward to the top near the museum and the exit. I looked back to see this human figure, a man, just staring at me from exactly where I was when I knelt down. He was locked onto my every movement and was just gazing up at me. I couldn't see him blinking, and I couldn't see his eye colour. He looked about 5'5" and was quite large, round with dark brown hair, a messy haircut and white skin. The only skin visible was his head, which was shaped like a deflated football, being serious. No neck visible, wearing all black with his hands in his pockets like he was wearing a sweatshirt and trousers. He was also in the shade created by the bush. He didn't move the whole 5 seconds I stared. I'm 96% sure he is human, as he looked like one, no translucent or nothing. I was quite far away, approximately 18 meters, but I have an image of him printed in my head that hasn't left. And as I checked everywhere before kneeling and walking in that direction, I'm an extremely paranoid person, as I check my surroundings all the time, as photography is a vulnerable hobby. I can only assume he was in the bush to the right of me logically, but for the voice in my head telling me to move immediately, any idea what it could be? Angels, spirit guide, intuition? It could just be a coincidence. But I feel very shaken by it for the last few days. I mean, like when people visit graveyards, they are usually grieving or looking after their past ones' graves, tidying or emptying bins. This guy was not doing any of that, just staring at me. But I believe he is human. Was I in immediate danger, as the voice was so urgent in my head? I don't drink alcohol or take anything or smoke. I don't have mental issues, and the only voices I get in my head are my thoughts. I have heard most graveyards are safe as consecrated grounds, but after some research on my graveyard, I found out that a section of this graveyard was unconsecrated grounds and was originally used in over 1900 to bury people like killers, thieves, unaliving, etc. There was also some sort of story where a man was found dead outside the graveyard in the middle of the road just after they had opened it for use. Do you think the graveyard could be slightly haunted? I also read that some supernatural things hang around graveyards to spook or attack, etc., the vulnerable, grieving ones. I don't know, I'm just quite shaken up. Also, me and a family member went back the other day, just to look from a distance where it happened. And on our way out, we felt a really cold, silent, eerie feeling.